Welcome to the Elokus podcast. This is class number 6 in the discourse of Chukas HaTorah, which is the 7th discourse in the overall book, Peshash Egdimu. So we're in the 7th discourse, named Zois Chukas, class number 6, and today we begin a new chapter, chapter 27. It's the second chapter in this discourse, 27th chapter in the overall book. Okay, so let's reread the Kitzur, so it's going to help us. Kitzur is a small summary that he does at the end of every chapter. So at the conclusion of last chapter, we learned that, just give me 1 second. So in the conclusion of the last chapter, we learned how there is, in addition to a revealed content that there is in a collection of letters that make up a word, when there is a word and there's a bunch of letters formulated together in a certain pattern, there's a revealed collective higher energy, and that is the content of the word or the content of the sentence or the content of the paragraph, which you lose when you separate the letter and you when you pluck the letter out and you separate it, then you're left just with a letter, which loses all that content. And that's a very revealed content, meaning when the letters are together, if you only understand the language, and then you understand the concept, there's a concept there. And that's a higher concept than the individual letters. But that's a revealed and tangible, a higher energy that is there as the collective combination of letters that dwells. We refer to that as or pnimi, as an internal light. But then, so there is 2 levels of or pnimi. There's an internal light of each letter. That means each letter has its own small little meaning, whatever a letter means. When letters come together and they form a unit, then there's a higher content which is derived from the combination of these letters coming all together. The meaning of the word, let's say the word blessing, like we discussed earlier, the word baruch, which has within it an or klali, a more general light, a higher light when the letters are together, which you lose when you separate the letters. But in addition to that, there is a mysterious light that's also there. That's an or klali, it's a general light, but on a much higher level. And that is also present and dwells on the combination of letters or the combination of words, but in a more distant, hidden way. And what is that? That's the power in the soul that it takes in order to bring letters together. As we learned, there's a very deep power of the soul, which is from the essence of, is even higher than the power of intelligence. It's from we traced it to the essence, the koyach hayuli, the abstract power of intelligence, which is from there. It's a subconscious or a superconscious power that every person has in order to formulate and bring and combine letters to make up the words that you use to articulate or to convey or to communicate ideas. And that's a very, he calls it a koyach nelam, a very concealed power that's within the soul. And that koyach as well is obviously what is lost once the letters are differentiated and separated. And the reason why he's discussing that is because of his whole introduction to chapter 27. Because in chapter 27, he's going to start Spheres Agnuzais. Because we are now discussing the Spheres Agnuzais, means the 10 hidden spheros, and they exist on 2 levels. They exist in a when they're not gnuzais, when they're not hidden, and their first emergence from a state of being hidden to a state of openness is when they come down as part of the kav. It's interesting, the kav, although the kav is just one line, it seems like one general light, it since it's a line, we're going to learn about it later, every line is made up of dots. So there is already a revelation of the 10 spheros already in the kav. And that's why the kav is already considered a revelation of these sphirot. But before the kav emerges, and it's still included in the Or Ein Sof that's before the Tzimtzum, then what happened before the contraction? Then these spheros are called Esespheros Agnuzais. They're hidden. But when they're hidden, they're all unified as one word. They're not like separated where they become each one a separate entity, but rather they're all unified as one word, and therefore there is a much higher light that shines in them. And this is what he's explaining is the power of the tzimtzum. The power of the contraction is that when you differentiate and you separate this unit of one idea of all 10 spheres when they were in a state of gnuzais, and now when you differentiate it and bring it and disseminate it or fragment it or bring it out each one individually, you're losing two powers. You're losing the Or Pnimi Haklali, let's call it this way, the internal general light. Why am I calling it Or Pnimi? Because it's a light that is felt within the sphirot. It would be similar to the content of the word blessing, which is an Or Pnimi, because it's something that is internalized in the letters Beis, Reish, Vav, Chaf, from the word Baruch. It conveys the concept of the word blessing, which is a greater idea. But it's also an Or Klali because it's general, because it's coming about from a combination of a few letters together. If you would have each, the Beis, the Vav, the Reish, and the Chaf, or you have the word blessing, the B, the L, the E, the S, the I, the N, the G, if you have every letter of it separated, then you don't have that content. You must put those letters together. So it's an Or Klali, it's a general light, but it's an Or Klali Pnimi, it's an internal general light. And this would be similar to the light that was shining in the 10 Sfirot. That is the meaning of all 10 Sfirot as they converge together. What these 10 Sfirot represent. Let me choose a meaning for now. I'm not choosing this out of nowhere. Even though he doesn't say it, but let me suggest right now so that we can relate to something, is the fact that God is emerging like a human. That's an idea, that God takes on a human form. The human form is the form of the Esespheros. That the fact that God is engaging, and really the entire cosmos is really in the form of a human. So the great, grand, infinite human. That's the entire underlying system of everything. So that system is not individual spherot. It's not, when you're looking at a human, you're not seeing, a combination of hands and feet and a head you're seeing one entity that makes up a human being. When obviously you realize when you dissect it, you realize that this human is made up of various different features, that all these features together, 248 limbs, 365 sinews and blood vessels, or you can say the general more powerful limbs and organs that make up the human. This is the person. Or if you want to talk psychologically, a human being is made up of intellect, emotions, and 5 senses, sensors, right? The senses of the power of seeing and hearing and speech and smell and touch, the various different elements that make up the persona of the person. But that's already details. But when you're looking, when you're examining, you take a human eye and you put it in a lab independently from the human, you can be focusing on the eye. But when you're looking at a human being as a whole, you're not seeing the eye as an eye. You're seeing as eye as part of the human. So that's the same idea. When all the 10 Sfirot, Hagenuzais, when they were all unified together, there was one picture that included all of them, and it was a grandiose idea that encompassed the entire cosmos. But then there's even a higher light that is shining when the 10 spheres were unified. And that is, what does it take to bring together these components to create this one human? What is it? How do you compose it from these seemingly individual and sometimes opposite powers? You got chesed there and you got gevura there. They're two opposite powers. So how do you combine this all together? What's the underlying power that remains unidentified, that remains mysterious, but it's affecting it? It's kind of like keeping it together. It's like from the outside, from a very distant place, it's converging and bringing opposites together and holding them together. It's like a hidden power that is in the distance. What is that? Oh, that's the koach hanelam. That's That's the higher power that can take a bunch of different points and converge it together to create one unit. What is that? That is a higher power than the power of the 10 Sfirot. What is that? That is the Koach Ein Sof. As he's going to explain now, that's the Sfiros Ein Kates. That's the level of the Ein Sof that he's not yet defined by 10 Sfirot. The light is in a state of absolute infinity, and from that infinite place, it produces the production of the 10 Sfirot, and the 10 Sfirot as a unit and as a singular phenomenon that will be expressed in these 10 points. But there is a power beyond the 10 points, above them and higher than them, which is, as he's going to explain in this chapter right now, which is the higher level of the Orin. So for those of you who were with us or remember, hope everybody was with us, because you can't pick up on this learning somewhere in the middle. You have to really go from the beginning. So if you remember in the earlier classes, we discussed that in Orin Sof itself, there's two stages. There's Orin Sof A and Orin Sof B, if you might call it. The Orin Sof, as the Orin Sof is in its higher, deeper state, where the content of that light is to express God, and there's no consideration of any recipient. It's a pure, infinite, limitless level of Orin Sof. And if we speak about Sfirot in this level, it would be Sfirot in Kates. It would be attributes without an end, conveying the utter limitless power of God to express himself in any which way possible or impossible, with infinite capabilities and infinite and boundless Ein Kates, literally without an end. And then there is the other dimension of the Orin Sof, where Hashem already within, we're going to talk about now in this chapter, where from within this infinite potential, he cordles off, so to speak, a particularized potential where God is considering that he's not just revealing himself, but he's revealing himself to an audience. He's revealing himself to somebody, to a recipient. And that is that God already has an idea of the worlds to which he wants to reveal himself to. And that context comes in the structure of 10 Sfirot. And that's the 10 hidden Sfiras, Hagnuzais, that is contained within the... It's almost like within the bigger circle comes forth a smaller circle, a circle with an or, with a light that is still. It's not. The 10 powers are not differentiable. It's all like, in a sense, one big mush. It's still higher than this or that, but it's already conditioning itself to produce 10 powers, and that is kind of from. It's like a scooping out from within the greater scooping bowl, scooping out a scoopful of a potential for 10 spheros. And we're going to see now in the next class, it's not literally the idea of scooping out, taking a little snippet of the Orin Sof and producing a power for 10 spheros. We're going to see it's a little different than that, but that's in overall the general idea. So these two powers, which both of them are still pre-tzimtzum, this is important to understand. We lose them both. Both these levels get lost when we draw forth the kav. Because when we're drawing forth the kav, it's like separating the letters, where the letters are no more combined together to form a word and to form sentences, where the letters become just individual letters, and A becomes an A and the B becomes a B, each one separated, each one individual on their own. So we are losing the greater picture, and we need that in order to actually create the world, a finite, limited world. So the energies are going to go through that state, and that's what the tzimtzum is going to affect. But within this tzimtzum, we're going to learn now, we have to block two lights. One is a lesser light, and one is a greater light. The lesser light is the light of the combined 10 sfirot, which is the second level of the Orin Sof, where the Orin Sof is already preconditioning itself to emanate 10 spheros, particularly 10. But since it's all 10 together, that's why it too needs to be filtered and it too needs to be blocked in order for the kav to emerge, which the kav already has within it a more of a relatability to 10 attributes, to 10 powers. And then, but even higher than that, this light is surrounded and cuddled and so to speak, couched. It is couched in a much greater infinite light, which is the Orin Sof on a level where it's not even a condition for 10 spheros, where it's spherot and kates. And that higher level is what he is comparing it to, the power of the soul that also resides on a sentence, but it's a hidden power of the soul that resides in the sentence. The hidden power of the soul is a much bigger content, is much bigger than the content of the word blessing. It's the person himself, it's you yourself that are present, meaning the power of the greater soul is present in the very notion of putting together letters to be able to hold to be able to facilitate an idea and to take a general idea, which an idea contains within it opposites, that has to have within it a power that's holding it. And what's that power? As we discussed earlier, the koach hamitzaref, the power that unifies words. And that koach hamitzaref in the nimshal, as it applies to God, is a power that's much higher than the esses spheros hagnuzais, the 10 esses spheros, but rather it's from the level of spheros enkates, from the level of the attributes that without an end, and that too was present and is present in the light before the tzimtzum, in the esses spheros hagnuzais. This was kind of present over there, and therefore it would not allow for creation to come about, for the whole process of creation to happen. So there has to be a concealment on both these levels. A greater concealment has to be on the more infinite light, and a lesser concealment has to be on the more limited light of the Or Ein Sof. Okay, let's read inside. This is chapter 27. We can say the dugma. The dugma means the example over here. In other words, the similarity, which we said that there is a higher power of the soul that resides on a sentence, and that we lose it when we break up a sentence, when we break up a word. So the example to that, as you will apply it above, in the 10 hidden spheros, which they are kolol. They are included in the Or Ein Sof lifnei tzimtzum, before the tzimtzum, which initially they were in a state before God starts breaking them up through the tzimtzum and then emerging the kav. But before that all happened, when they were all still in a state of achtos, to us, because then gilui or, and that state, when they were in that state, they had a lot of light shining in them. Like we explained in chapter 23, and we explained in chapter 25. So, in addition to the idea that we said that there is inside of them a or pnimi, an internal light, which is, what is the internal light? The internal light, a general internal light. Shazahu, what is that? Which in the example would be the meaning of the word baruch, the meaning of the word blessing, or the meaning of the idea, any concept, any idea, that is one thought that contains many details, but there's one general, a higher idea that you can only see in the entire sentence. Shazahu, and as it applies above, what is that? Shazahu kavana al yoina, this is the higher intention. Sheyesh, that there is ba'atzilos esesphiros, when God emanates the 10 spheros. Ubamashen eser dafka, in this that they are dafka 10. As we said earlier, that's the human shape, that's the human form. So there is a very deep, infinite, and incomprehensible idea to us of why God chose particularly these 10 spherot, which make up the shape of the human, and why, and all of this is the content of this formula, of this formation is something that you feel only when all lights are together. Just like when you look at a human, you only see the content of the human if you see the human put together. But if you were never to see a human being, and then you would go into a factory, and there would be hands, and there would be feet, and there would be eyes, and you would see each individual particle of a human, you would not get the idea of a human. I mean, you can still try to, after the guy gives a tour and explains that, so this will be the eyes, and you're still not getting it. You have to see the whole unit put together, and then you know that this is a human. So the same is also this light that we are talking now about now is the lower element, which is the content of the 10 of the sphirot, what they mean altogether. And again, we're talking on a very lofty level. when they were all unified as one in the Or Ein Sof. Like we explained earlier in chapter 25. There we also gave an example. In addition to a word that contains a concept, he also gave an example of a teacher that conceives an idea. That idea contains many, many particles and many details, but the teacher sees the entire idea as one idea. But once they start teaching the classes to the students, they start differentiating it, and it's going to take a whole semester to be able to really take that, to give off that idea. And that's going to come through a whole series of small lessons. Each lesson, we're going to piece together the lesson. And these are little pieces and little parts. So when you're dealing with the parts, you don't see the big picture. But the teacher did see the big picture. So these Eser Sfiros, Hagnuzais, when they were all together, you have the ginormous picture of all of the sum totality of all of existence, all wrapped into one beautiful, big idea. But this is the lower level. This is the level of the general light, but that's Or Pnimi. It's the internal light that is visible in the vessels, in the 10 spheres. But then there is Oidzais. There was something even higher than them. It's the mystical distant power, the power that's from very, very far away. That is affecting from a distance, keeping the 10 sphero together. In addition to that, there was also a general light, which is an Or Klali, a general light, that is rising above them all. The Yeshleima, we can say that what is that when it comes to the sublime divine significance above. The Yeshleima, we can say, it was shining upon these 10 hidden spheros when they were together. It was shining upon them begilui in a revealed way. That means they themselves felt and sensed the light that is completely Or Ein Sof. That is literally limitless. The concept, the level of spheros Ein Kates, the place where the spherot are an infinite potential. Okay. And that too was hovering above. When we say hovering above, actually he's going to explain that when the Esespheres Hagnuzais were still Ganos, it was like one, it's like this, the 10 hidden spheros are embedded in an infinite ocean of this infinite potential. And it's in a sense indifferentiable. So the Or Ein Sof, the second level of the Or Ein Sof, is one with the first level of the Or Ein Sof. And in that case, you don't even see these 10 hidden. That's why it's called Hagnuzais. They're completely hidden. And not only are they not perceivable to someone else, but even within themselves, they're not known. They're canceled. He's soon going to give the example like the light of the sun, like the ray of the sun while it's in the sun. And therefore, but it was present there. So there was a double. First of all, there is the content of the 10 spheros that was shining, that was there present. And then there was also it was graced by the infinite light that is infinitely above it. And the point of here is to understand that it's not just because it was there. It was there because it's necessary for the 10 spheres to form. The 10 hidden spheres to form requires this light. It's not like, because God never separated. He didn't scoop the scoop of ice cream out of the bigger tub, so therefore it's still inside of it. No. For this scoop to be this particular scoop, it needs to be surrounded and affected by this light. Why? Because as we learned earlier, in order to bring together letters to form a sentence, you need a much higher power in the soul to do that. Higher than the intellect itself. Higher than the idea itself. And therefore, to be able to, for the concept of 10 spheres, 10 for a unit, for a formation of the idea of this human, of the supernal human that is going to be constituted of these 10 powers, all serving one idea, the combining force that combines it is above the limitations of these 10 powers. And therefore, that's what we mean that this light was present over there. It wasn't only because we hadn't yet separated it. It was because it is actually related to the 10 spheres, affecting the 10 spheres. But this power is only present when you have it's related to the combination of all of them. Their individual components does not have any utility in this infinite light. The infinite light doesn't play a role, so to speak, to produce the individual sphirot over here. In as much as we're concerned right now, what this infinite light was affecting was a combination, just like in a person. What are we saying? When do we need this infinite power of the soul? When you're going to combine sentences. But when you're not combining sentences and you're just going to rattle off letters A, B, C, you don't need it. So it's not being tapped. But when you're combining a sentence, that's when that power is activating. That's when that power is being present. So now, the moment we are going away from this combination, which means we're fragmenting the letters, we're breaking them up, then what's happening? We're going to have a double loss. And through the tzimtzum, which is now the work of piecing it into pieces, undoing this combination, that one sphera itself should emerge, levada alone, in a levad b'chinas miyot or pnimi, in addition to the diminishment of the internal light. What does that mean? You don't have any more the word blessing over here. Once you pluck the B, the base from the baruch, and you pluck the letters individually, you lose it. In addition to that, you also causes a departure and a concealment of a oira oila al kolana, of the greater light that is oila al kolana, that rises above them all. It's a lashon of Tanya. That higher light, which is the combining factor, the combining influence, that too, being that it's not being used anymore, it departs. In other words, it's not necessary. It's not being called for anymore. Its services are not needed anymore, because its services were needed to create this theme, this idea of unifying these diverse components, and sometimes not just diverse but opposite components. But now that the meeting is over and everybody's going in its own way, then that unique power is not needed anymore. So now he's going to differentiate, and he's going to say like this. In the mashal of the word baruch, when we separate one letter from the word, when it comes to our human example, when we take a sentence and when we take a word, and we fragment and we break up the sentence, we break up the word, you lose immediately both elements. You lose the meaning of the word because you don't have the word anymore. You lose the meaning of the sentence because when you separated the letters. And in addition to that, since the services of the combining power is not necessary, is not being in play over here, so kind of that element is also now disappears. It's not present anymore. However, above, he's explaining over here, it comes in two stages. It's not one dissolution. It's not one tzimtzum that disconnects it all. It's two separate tzimtzumim affecting these two levels of light. Ulamayla and above, and base tzimtzumim. They are two contractions. First is the higher contraction, which is going to block the infinite light. The first one is the tzimtzum of the Ein Sof. And this is, by the way, what we usually refer to as tzimtzum harishon b'derech siluk. We always speak about that there was an infinite light was present, and then God had to, in order to create the worlds, to make space. Hashem silek oirei hagad alatzad. That's the words of the Arizal. that God retracted his infinite light to the side, alatzad. So this idea that the Or Ein Sof is nistalik, the parts to the side, is this idea. It's the higher level of the Sfirot Ein Kates, this higher power that was once present and dwelling over here, needed to be pulled in and hidden and removed completely. And it was hidden, it became reabsorbed in the essence. It means it wasn't expressed like light that's expressed, but it's like sucking the light back into the luminary that produced the light, to the light source. And then a second tzimtzum, the tzimtzum that's affecting the word itself. Again, there was one tzimtzum that's affecting the power that combined the letters to begin with, and that we removed already. Now, let's imagine that for somehow the word is still standing, even though if the power that initially brought them together disappeared. But let's say once the word is here, the word you're holding on to it, the word is not disappearing. Now comes the second symptom, and what does the second symptom do? It dissolves the word, and it separates the letters. Now, the difference between the first symptom and the second symptom is the first symptom, that power completely disappears without leaving a trace. The second symptom, you're not completely disintegrating it, because when you're taking the word Baruch and you're breaking it into a Beis, Reish, Vav, Chaf, individual letters, you still have a little trace of the original light, because there's a little piece of it in every letter. So it's not a complete, that's why it's called Tzimtzum B'derech Miut. The Tzimtzum is now just a diminishment, it's not a complete removal. And the second symptom is a tzimtzum b'shayrish or makar akav. The second symptom is in the root and in the source of the kav, which is what the 10 hidden spheres. Lios nimshach, that it should be drawn sphera achas levad, that it should be drawn forth only one sphera. Loi b'his arvus kulam yachad, not with all 10 of them combined together. And they need it, and these are the two levels of the tzimtzum. Let's leave the next class to explain why it had to be in two tzimtzumim, in two contractions, and what is the significance of these contractions. Meanwhile, let Mashiach be here and undo all the contractions and reveal the infinite light. And we will not disappear even if we have that revelation, as Chassidus is always teaching us.